Hello. Welcome back to the Universal Mind channel. This is episode 7, and it's part 4 of our study of the scientific theory of reincarnation. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever experienced a waking dream? They call them also lucid dreams, where you're awake, but in the dream state. You're fully aware of what's going on, but you're having this dream sequence playing out in your mind. And it's about a time in history, a location, an event that could never have happened in this life. And it is so real, so vivid, you feel like you're living it. That, in my opinion, is an experience from a deep-seated memory in your mind from a past life that during sleep has floated up to the surface in your mind, in your consciousness, and you're reliving an event that you experienced in a past life. Now, if reincarnation is a process of preserving individuality from one life to the next, if the body dies, where do the memories go? The memories from your mind go somewhere. If reincarnation exists, it has to obey natural laws like anything else in the universe. So there has to be a transport mechanism, and there has to be a location where these memories go so that you have your individuality is preserved for a next life. Well, what is that next life? Where does it come from? I think you'd be shocked to know just how practical and pragmatic the answer is to that question. We're going to find out what the answer is today in this episode. This is from my book, Reincarnation, the Scientific Theory, and it's chapter 4, Evolution, the Quiet Creator. There is but one interface between life as we know it and the laws of conservation of energy and information. We call this interface genetics, evolution. While DNA and RNA control and predetermine form and context for all life on Earth, these genetic codes must obey the same fundamental laws of the universe as any other physical process. Though we don't yet know how evolution began or what created it, we do know evolution is a process created from within the fundamental laws of the universe like everything else in this universe. Therefore, its function and biology must act in accord with those universal laws. We're only now beginning to understand genetics. The relationship between genetic evolution and the forces and elements that combine to create life still remain unknown. However, it would be logically inconsistent to conclude that the process of biological adaptation to preserve life, evolution, is separate and apart from whatever forces in the universe spawn life in the first place. They've got to be connected. They've got to be intertwined. They've got to be part of the same dynamic. They must exist concurrently and interact in balance with one another. Evolution is not fully appreciated yet as the universal force of nature. I believe it is. Life itself is a force of nature, and it interconnected with each of the other major forces in ways we don't yet understand. Our theory is that reincarnation is an evanescent, emergent genetic trait. Evolution constructed over time, applying fundamental processes of thermodynamics, physics, and biochemistry to comply with the fundamental conservation of laws of energy and information. The physical universe is a flux of matter and energy that constantly changes states over time, just like water changes states when you change its temperature from a gas, steam, to a liquid, water, to ice. Therefore, the state of existence we humans know as our present physical life is not meant to exist forever in that same state. We transit from one state to another. Just like every other element, every other physical construct the universe has. We don't remain the same forever. We change states. But as we've noted before, we're comprised of coherent information, coherent and energy form. That can't die. There is no such thing as death for what we are. The concepts of a physical hell and a physical heaven don't exist. The Webb and the Hubble telescopes have looked back to the dawn of time. They found wondrous things, but no heaven and no hell, because they're imaginary, meant to control masses of people who were at the time, thousands of years ago, unsophisticated, uneducated. We're different now. We're better now. We know more. And knowledge is better than non-knowledge. Because knowledge is truth. And like the old saying, the truth will set you free. So will information about who you are. So life cannot exist, it cannot cease to exist. It must be eternal. Logic tells us that existence continues in some form of state of matter and energy even after physical death. The laws of energy and information conservation mandate that information continues to exist in one form or another forever. Reincarnation is the bridge evolution created and adapted to the human body to comply with these two laws. Human evolution resulted in individuality as the genetic trait best suited to organize and preserve information under natural law. Reincarnation is the logical evolutionary adaptation of biological processes needed to form a coherent phase state of energy capable of receiving, prioritizing, storing, and transferring information, memories, in sufficient quantity and quality to isolate and preserve our individuality between our human physical lifetimes. And once the physical body dies, non-physicality diffuses the information stored in the brain like steam escaping a boiling pot of water. If nothing happened, that information would just diffuse into the universe. Wouldn't be lost, because information cannot be lost, but it would decorporealize. It wouldn't be coherent anymore. To conserve information beyond death, evolution needed a method of creating a coherent pulse of information capable of surviving the loss of physicality until reorganizing itself in a living host again. Reincarnation must therefore be a combination of genes, proteins, and amino acids whose expressions need not occur during normal life at all. Now, they may lie dormant during normal life and only become expressed, active, as the body encounters a life-threatening event. In other words, we've got these genes and proteins and amino acids running through our bodies, and some of them are designed to participate in this reincarnation process. But there's no need for that until the body is about ready to die. And the need then becomes immediate. So until that happens, those genes, those amino acids, those sequences probably lie dormant, hidden, if you want to say. because they're not needed. As the body reacts to a threat, for example, a serious injury, a serious illness, a car accident, the person is dying, but not dead yet. There should exist, and I believe there exists, a biological trigger as to that occurs at that time of physical stress, imminent death, but not dead yet. So this trigger would cause the expression of genes necessary to organize, prioritize, store, and transfer memories from the brain's neural net into a coherent energy state lasting long enough to preserve the information as it transits from the dying host to where? I believe there's only one place for it to go. There's only one place. There's only one place in the universe that our coherent individuality can transit from a dying body to a fetus. Because otherwise, that information is diffused. To keep it physical, to maintain its physicality, there has to be a short space of time within which it's non-physical. Otherwise, it would become non-coherent information, random, and it would become entropy. It would entropy. Where else can that energy go if it's coherent and it's ready to become another, be part of another life? Where is that life? But the physical body created when sperm meets egg develops, and you have a fetus. Where else can that energy go? That's the only place. Evolution's capacity to upregulate, activate genes at near death or even post-mortem was documented in 2016 by Peter Noble, PhD, professor at the University of Washington, whose expertise is in the field of genetic expression, molecular genetics, and DNA sequencing. This is not science fiction, folks. Evolution has already been found to have the capacity to upregulate, activate genes only at the time of death. Suddenly they become active when they were non-active, dormant before. This isn't science fiction. This is science. In one experiment, Dr. Noble studied how zebrafish and mice genes behaved after death. To his surprise, neither sets of genes decayed when their fish and mouse hosts died. Instead, they suddenly began functioning only after death, these genes. This presents a rather bizarre mystery. Why certain genetic profiles turn on or become upregulated only after death, it's unknown. To quote Dr. Noble, and this is from Noble, PA, and Posikoff, A.E. et al., and I'm not going to be able to pronounce this word. It's THANATO, thanatotranscriptamine, genes actively expressed after organismal death. 2016, Open Biology, retrieved at biorxiv.org. And here's the quote. This is what Dr. Noble wrote. Upregulation of genes, activation of genes, demonstrates formation of a new molecules post-mortem. Sufficient energy within cells of dead animals exists to maintain gene transcription up to 96 hours after death. An unknown regulatory network appears to be still turning on and off genes in organismal death. That's a mouthful, but I think you get the point. He discovered genes that turn on at and even after death that hadn't been on before. They're doing something. Something's going on after that animal dies. Noble's team also found the timing of gene upregulation at death. While most of the genes turning off at death did so immediately at death, some didn't turn on for 24 to 48 hours post-mortem. 1 to 2 days, then they turn on. Why? How? What's the point? Do animals have some form of connection to reincarnating and preserving information? Every living thing, think about it, folks, every living thing stores information. Every biological entity receives, stores, transfers information. The sensory information they obtain every second of their lives, it's stored. And what happens when that entity dies? Is it possible that you don't have to be a human to have your consciousness saved? Where else is consciousness an organism that grows and develops? Is individuality an organism that grows and develops from one life to the next, from non-human to human? Something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. And it's time we got our heads out of the sand of ancient religion and began looking at who and what we really are. Don't you think? Dr. Noble continues, quote, "These differences in timing and abundances suggest some sort of global network is still operating. What makes one gene expression of life different from gene expression at death is that post-mortem upregulation of genes offers no obvious benefit to the now dead organism." Makes sense. Why turn on a gene after the body's dead? Unless something isn't dead. Something we don't yet understand because we haven't paid attention to it, because our head's in the sand of ancient religions. That have us stuck in reverse for 2,000 years. He goes on, "We argue that self-organizing processes driven by thermodynamics are responsible for the post-mortem upregulation of genes." I'm going to repeat that. We argue, this is Dr. Noble's quote. "We argue that self-organizing processes driven by thermodynamics are responsible for the post-mortem upregulation of genes." Self-organizing means there's a process that is going on that Dr. Noble doesn't understand yet, that seems to be organizing itself for some purpose, that only began at death or after, 1 to 2 days after death. And it's those processes that have begun activating the genes after death. Noble and his colleagues correctly point out the mystery regarding the upregulation of genes post-mortem without any apparent benefit to the now deceased animal. Evolution is never without reason, however. You have to take that into account. Evolution doesn't do anything without a reason. So why this? Why start genes becoming active suddenly at or days after death? What's the point? What's going on within that dying body that's not yet dead, apparently? And if these animals aren't dead yet, then something's still going on in the human body even days after the human dies. There's a process going on that we don't recognize because we haven't been trained to, because our heads and minds have been stuck in the sand of ancient religion for 2,000 years. And we're indoctrinated not to look. Certainly, the ability to turn specific genes on at and after death is a necessary component for reincarnation to operate. That this capability is found in lower life forms is evidence of evolution's interest in the process of selective expression of genes at or after death. Is evolution practicing? Was it practicing? Was it developing itself with these lower life forms? We see evolution at work, preparing individual processes in lower life forms to be brought together in higher life forms, humans. Evolution, I believe, is a zero-sum process. Natural selection is all or nothing, survival or dead. One or the other. You survive or you don't survive. Zero-sum game. If the genetic code of a species maximizes its group fitness for survival, dinosaurs, for example, it will be able to pass those genes along to its children indefinitely. Unforeseen asteroids the exception, of course. If, however, a species lacks group fitness for survival, ultimately there are no children. And this species becomes what? Extinct. Group fitness for survival has been evolution's mantra until the arrival of humans. Humanity's ascension over the genome as Earth's dominant species caused a fundamental change in evolution's priorities. Evolution itself is ever evolving. Don't forget, evolution just hasn't stopped growing, evolving itself. While continuing to apply its original code of group fitness, evolution has slowly but gradually built something uniquely human: individuality. Lower animals don't have it yet. Some not at all, others a little. A horse runs off from the herd. Why? Because it's an individual. It's developing individuality by experiencing it, and therefore changing the evolution of the species. And yet you've got that group, that herd think going on, the herd mindset, reining that lone horse back. While continuing to apply its original code of group fitness, evolution has slowly but gradually built something uniquely human: individuality. Gerald H. Jacobs, PhD, professor of psychology at the University of California at Santa Barbara, explains, quote, "Humanity is in the process of evolving from collective uniformity to increasing variation and diversity. This movement has gained impetus from the growing recognition that the overall strength and sustainability of the collective is proportionate to the value it accords to each individual human being and the active support it lends for full development of each individual's unique creative potentials." And that quote is from Jacobs, G., An Evolutionary View of Individuality, 2012, World Academy of Art and Science, retrieved at worldacademy.org. Excuse me. Human individuality did not appear out of thin air overnight. No evolutionary process has suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Evolution has been manipulating the trait of individuality for millions, if not billions, of years. True, evolution's methodology may have begun as a shotgun approach toward biological adaptation, but its history reveals its singular purpose to something quite different. The major transitions theory of evolution argues that evolution is an ongoing process driven by a small number of major evolutionary transitions. In each transition, a small number of individuals that were previously able to survive and reproduce independently from the group create a new and more complex life form. Genes, for example, cooperate to form genomes. Archaea and eubacteria form eukaryotic cells. Cells cooperated together to form multicellular organisms. And that is from John Maynard Smith and Eeyore Szatmary, Szatmary, The Major Transition in Evolution, 1995, Oxford University Press, Oxford, England. And what I'll do, folks, is in the description, to save us time, I'm not going to read the citations. I'll just add them in the description. Help us along here. The evolution has been using individual mutations and group fitness as an intertwined pair of global trait constructors. One counterbalances the other, but both are essential to the overall process. In 2015, Stuart A. West, a PhD, also with PhD Dr. Roberta M. Fisher, and their research team identified two conditions defining an evolutionary transition in individuality. Excuse me. A little water helps, right? Evolution has been using, let's see where I am here. Stewart has been a professor of evolutionary biology at England's Oxford University. Dr. Fisher is associated with the Department of Ecological Science at Vrij University in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And in case I pronounced it wrong, it's spelled V-R-I-J-E, Vrij. First, entities capable of independent replication before the transition can replicate only as part of a larger unit after the transition. This is called by several terms: mutual dependence, interdependence, and contingent irreversibility. Second, a relative lack of within-group conflict occurs such that the larger group can be thought of a fitness-maximizing individual organism. An example of this condition would include a group of cells that make up a multicellular animal as a single organism. When these two conditions are met, West's team hypothesizes evolution can produce a higher level individual organism. While no species has been individualized more than humans, the trait itself has been in development for untold millions, if not billions, of years. Observation alone confirms that individuality as a trait shows increased expression as one moves up the evolutionary ladder toward humanity. The higher and more complex the life form, the greater the expression of individuality within the species. As with any new mutation within a species, individuality had to survive as a trait among competing traits, especially the trait of group fitness. In other words, any new mutation has to fight to survive, because the normal, quote unquote, normal genes fight that mutation because it's odd. In 1998, the noted evolutionary biologist and author of Darwinian Dynamics, Richard Michaud, PhD of the University of Arizona, presented an explanation for why individuality prevailed. Quote, "What explains the individuality of organisms? For an organism to be an individual or evolutionary unit requires functions at the organism level that protect it from conflict within natural selection. At any level requires heritable variations in fitness at that level. To emerge as an evolutionary individual, cell groups must acquire the means to guarantee fitness heritability at the group organism level. In other words, for evolution to protect its survivability, individuality must have appeared as a very important trait necessary for survival of complex species. To support this theory, Michaud identified germline modifiers and self-policing modifiers as the first uniquely organismal functions that evolved during the transition from unicellular to multicellular life. These modifiers protect the evolved mutated cell from being attacked from within by pro-unicellular enzymes. In other words, the pro-unicellular enzymes attack these mutations. That's what they're meant to do, to protect the group of cells. Just what happens in a society, human society. We're very much like any other biological life form. It's very difficult from people born and raised to be normal and part of a group identity to accept oddballs, strangers, people who are different, have a different lifestyle. And they go nuts. They can't handle it. They get violent sometimes. It's a mob mentality that takes over. And it's illuminating how human social interaction, even in the area of different lifestyles that can be regarded as mutations in biological diversity among humans, is very similar to how lower life forms interact, even down to the cellular level. We humans are billions of years ahead of simple multicellular organisms, however. How evolution has modified us over those eons of time, however, remains yet unclear. However, Corey McLean and a team at Stanford University have been attempting to identify molecular events that particularly are prone to produce significant changes in human genetic structure, such as deletion of DNA sequences that were otherwise highly conserved between chimpanzees and other mammals. They were able to identify more than 500 such deletions in humans, which are almost exclusively from what are called no coding zones. He concludes, quote, "Humans differ from other animals in many respects of anatomy, physiology, and behavior. However, the genotypic basis of most human species traits remains unknown." We define the term individuality to mean the identity matrix created when we subjectively prioritize those memories upon which our self-image depends. Now I want to repeat that. We define the term individuality. To me, the identity matrix, everything that makes up our individuality, or everything that makes up our identity. And that's created when we subjectively prioritize those memories upon which our self-image depends. We control what we remember. And the extent to which we assign within our body the emotions that we give to a memory, those are noted in our limbic system. And our limbic system puts a weight, an imprint, upon each neuron that contains a memory. And each memory has a different weight. And when we die, the memories, the neurons that have the most weight, that are the most emotionally important to us for our self-image, for who we are, those are the ones that are conserved, those are the ones that matter, those are the ones that are passed on to our next life. This identity matrix changes over time as we acquire new experiences and emotional responses to those experiences. The more we live, the more we experience, the more memories we create that are tagged with emotions. And there are new emotional memories every day. Some not as important as others, some more important. So the memories that our body automatically has formulated to pass on to a new life changes as we live our lives and experience new things and new emotions tagged with those memories. It would take days to go through all our memories to isolate only those upon which we identify as necessary to describe who we are. However, reincarnation, that process collects, reviews, and prioritizes individual memories almost instantly. Couple of points, and then we'll call it a day. 1. Individuality is more important than most other genetic traits such as hair color, eye color, facial features, being able to walk on 2 legs, opposable thumbs, and say the folds and ridges of the human brain's cortex for a greater brain area. Indeed, individuality is equal with natural selection and group fitness as fundamental algorithms of evolution. 2. Evolution has been refining ever more complex forms of individuality from the time multicellular organisms emerged from the unicellular. And we can't expect evolution to stop now. It's going to keep evolving itself and us along with it. 3. Individuality has proven its survivability over time and must be recognized as a dominant trait. Recorded history confirms individuality's irreversibility as such a trait. Despite repeated efforts over history, no tyrant, no dictator has yet been able to crush the concept of individual freedom from human consciousness. Individual freedom of expression is an irresistible urge within the consciousness of all humans. An urge evolution has gone to great effort over eons to create and protect. Something to think about. I appreciate your time. We'll go into even more detail next time on the Universal Mind Channel. You can reach us if you have a question or a comment. You can reach us at the Universal Mind Channel at gmail.com. That's the Universal Mind Channel at gmail.com. Thank you so very much. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day.